Ashay, my loves. Grand rising to the family. This is your girl, Empress Queen, coming at you one more again, babies. We're going to go ahead and finish up this Book of Enoch, okay, loves? See how much longer we got.
Concerning the secrets. And he has established your name among the holy, and will keep you from amongst those who dwell upon the dry ground. And he has destined your offspring in righteousness to be kings and for great honors. And from your offspring will flow out a spring of the righteous and holy without number forever. And after this, he showed me the angels of punishment, who were ready to come and release all the forces of the water, which is under the earth, in order to bring judgment and destruction on all those who reside and dwell upon the dry ground. And the Lord of spirits commanded the angels who were coming out not to raise their hands, but to keep watch, for those angels were in charge of the forces of the waters. And I came out from before Enoch. And in those days the word of the Lord came to me, and he said to me, Noah, behold, your lot has come up before me, a lot without reproach, a lot of love and uprightness. And now the angels are making a wooden structure, and when the angels come out from that task, I will put my hand on it and keep it safe. And a change shall take place, so that the dry ground may not remain empty. And I will establish your offspring before me forever and ever, and I will scatter those who dwell with you over the face of the dry ground. I will not again put them to the test on the face of the earth, but they will be blessed and increase on the dry ground in the name of the Lord. And they will shut up those angels who showed iniquity in that burning valley, which my great-grandfather Enoch had shown to me previously in the west, near the mountains of gold and silver and iron and soft metal and tin. And I saw that valley in which there was a great disturbance and a heaving of the waters. And when all this happened from the fiery molten metal and the disturbance, which disturbed the waters in that place, a smell of sulfur was produced, and it was associated with those waters. And that valley of the angels who led men astray burns under the ground. And through the valleys of that same area flow out rivers of fire, where those angels will be punished, who led astray those on the dry ground. And in those days, those waters will serve the kings and the mighty and the exalted and those who dwell upon dry ground for the healing of their soul and body, but also for the punishment of the spirit. And their spirits are so full of lust that they will be punished in their bodies, for they denied the Lord of spirits. And they see their punishment every day, yet they do not believe in his name. And the more their bodies are burnt, the more a change will come over their spirits forever and ever. For no one can speak an idle word in front of the Lord of spirits. For judgment will come upon them, for they believe in the lust of their bodies, but deny the Spirit of the Lord. And those same waters will undergo a change in those days. For when those angels are punished in those days, the temperature of those springs of water will change. And when the angels come up, that water of the springs will change and become cold. And I heard the holy Michael answering and saying, this judgment with which the angels are judged is a testimony for the kings and the mighty who possess the dry ground. For these waters of judgment serve for the healing of the bodies of the kings and for the lust of their bodies. But they do not see and they do not believe that these waters will change and will become a fire which burns forever. And after this, my great-grandfather Enoch gave me the explanation of all the secrets in a book and the parables that had been given to him. And he put them together for me in the words of the book of parables. And on that day, the holy Michael answered Raphael, saying, the power of the Spirit seizes me and makes me tremble because of the harshness of the judgment of the angels. Who can endure the harshness of the judgment which has been executed and before which they melt with fear? And the holy Michael answered Raphael again and said to him, who would not soften his heart over it, and whose mind would not be disturbed by this word? Judgment has gone out against them upon those whom they have led out like this. But it came to pass when he stood before the Lord of spirits that the holy Michael spoke as follows to Raphael. I will not take the part under the eye of the Lord, for the Lord of spirits is angry with them, because they act as if they were the Lord. Because of this, the hidden judgment will come upon them forever and ever, for neither any other angel nor any man will receive their lot, but they alone have received their judgment forever and ever. And after this judgment, I will terrify them and make them tremble, for they have shown this to those who dwell upon the dry ground. And behold, the names of those angels. The first of them is Simyaza, and the second Artakifa, and the third Armin, and the fourth Kokabiel, and the fifth Turiel, and the sixth Ramiel, and the seventh Daniel, and the eighth Nuquel, and the ninth Baraquiel, and the 10th Azazel, and the 11th Armoros, the 12th Batriel, the 13th Bazazel, the 14th Ananel, the 15th Turiel, the 16th Samsiel, the 17th Yedarel, the 18th Tumiel, the 19th Turiel, the 20th Rumiel, and the 21st Azazel. And these are the chiefs of their angels, and the names of the leaders of hundreds, and their leaders of fifties, and their leaders of tens. The name of the first is Yakun. This is the one who led astray all the children of the holy angels, and he brought them down unto the ground, and led them astray through the daughters of men. And the name of the second is Asbiel. This one suggested an evil plan to the children of the holy angels, and led them astray, so that they corrupted their bodies with the daughters of men. And the name of the third is Gadriel. This is the one that showed all the deadly blows to the sons of men, and he led astray Eve. And he showed the weapons of death to the children of men, the shield and the breastplate, and the sword for slaughter, and all the weapons of death to the sons of men. And from his hand they have gone out against those who dwell the dry ground from that time and forever and ever. And the name of the fourth is Peninu. This one showed the sons of men the bitter and the sweet, and showed them all the secrets of their wisdom. He taught men the art of writing with ink and paper, and through this many have gone astray, from eternity to eternity and to this day. For men were not created for this, that they should confirm their faith like this, with pen and ink. For men were created no differently from the angels, so that they might remain righteous and pure, and death, which destroys everything, would not have touched them. But through this knowledge of theirs, they are being destroyed, and through this power, death consumes them. And the name of the fifth is Casdea. This one showed the sons of men all the evil blows of the spirits and of the demons, and the blows that attack the embryo in the womb so that it miscarries, and the blows that attack the soul, the bite of the serpent, and the blows that occur at midday, and the son of the serpent, who is strong. And this is the task of Kesbil, the chief of the oath, who showed the oath to the holy ones when he dwelt on the high in glory, and his name is Becca. And this one told the holy Michael that he should show him the secret name, so that they might mention it in the oath, so that those who showed the sons of men everything that is secret trembled before that name and oath. And this is the power of this oath, for it is powerful and strong, and he placed this oath, okay, in the charge of the holy Michael. And these are the secrets of this oath, and they are strong through this oath. And heaven was suspended before the world was created, and forever. And through it the earth was founded upon the water. And from the hidden recesses of the mountains come beautiful waters, from the creation of the world, and forever. And through that oath the sea was created, and as its foundation, for the time of anger, he placed for it the sand, and it does not go beyond it, from the creation of the world and forever. And through that oath the deeps were made firm, and they stand and do not move from their place, from the creation of the world and forever. And through that oath the sun and the moon complete their course, and do not transgress their command, from the creation of the world and forever. And through that oath the stars complete their course, and he calls their names, and they answer him, from the creation of the world and forever. And likewise the spirits of the water, of the winds, and of all the breezes and their paths, according to all the groups of the spirits, And there are kept the storehouses of the sound of thunder and of the light of the lightning. And there are kept the storehouses of the hail and the hoarfrost, and the storehouses of the mist, and the storehouses of the rain and dew. And all these make their confession and give thanks in front of the Lord of spirits and sing praises with all their power. And their food consists of all their thanksgiving, and they give thanks, praise, and exalt in the name of the Lord of spirits forever and ever. And this oath is strong over them, and through it they are kept safe, and their courses are not disturbed. And they had great joy, and they blessed, praised, and exalted, because the name of that Son of Man had been revealed to them. And he sat on the throne of his glory, and the whole judgment was given to the Son of Man, and he will cause the sinners to pass away and be destroyed from the face of the earth. And those who led astray the world will be bound in chains, and will be shut up in the assembly place of their destruction, and all their works will pass away from the face of the earth. And from then on, there will be nothing corruptible. For that Son of Man has appeared and has sat on the throne of his glory, and everything will pass away and go from in front of him. And the word of that Son of Man will be strong in front of the Lord of spirits. This is the third parable of Enoch. And it came to pass after this that while he was living, his name was lifted from those who dwell upon the dry ground to the presence of that Son of Man, and to the presence of the Lord of spirits. And he was lifted on the chariots of the Spirit, and his name vanished from among them. And from that day I was not counted among them. And he placed me between two winds, between the north and the west, where the angels took the cords to measure for me the place for the chosen and the righteous. And there I saw the first fathers and the righteous who from the beginning of the world dwelt in that place. And it came to pass after this that my spirit was carried off, and it went up into the heavens. I saw the sons of the holy angels treading upon flames of fire. Their garments were white, and their clothing, and the light of their face was like snow. And I saw two rivers of fire, and the light of that fire shone like a hyacinth. And I fell upon my face in front of the Lord of spirits. And the angel Michael, one of the archangels, took hold of me by my right hand, and raised me and led me out to all the secrets of mercy and the secrets of righteousness. And he showed me all the secrets of the ends of heaven, and all the storehouses of the stars, and the lights from where they come out from below the holy ones. And the Spirit carried Enoch off to the highest heaven, and I saw there, in the middle of that light, something built of crystal stones, and in the middle of those stones, tongues of living fire. And my spirit saw a circle of fire, which surrounded that house. From its four sides came rivers, full of living fire, and they surrounded that house. And round about were the seraphim, and the cherubim, and the Ophanim. These are they who do not sleep, but keep watch over the throne of his glory. And I saw angels who could not be counted, 1,000 thousands and 10,000 times 10,000 surrounding that house. And Michael and Raphael and Gabriel and Phanuel and the holy angels who are in the heavens above went in and out of that house. And Michael and Raphael and Gabriel and Phanuel and many holy angels without number came out from that house. And with them the head of days, his head white and pure like wool, and his garments indescribable. And I fell upon my face, and my whole body melted, and my spirit was transformed. And I cried out in a loud voice in the spirit of power, and I blessed, praised, and exalted. And these blessings which came out from my mouth were pleasing before that head of days. And that head of days came with Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Phanuel, and thousands and tens of thousands of angels without number. And that angel came to me and greeted me with his voice, and said to me, "You are the Son of Man, who was born to righteousness, and righteousness remains over you, and the righteousness of the head of days will not leave you." And he said to me, "He proclaims peace to you in the name of the world which is to come. For from there peace has come out from the creation of the world, and so you will have it forever and forever and ever. And all will walk according to your way, inasmuch as righteousness will never leave you. With you will be their dwelling, and with you their lot. And they will not be separated from you forever and forever and ever. And so there will be length of days with that Son of Man. And the righteous will have peace, and the righteous will have an upright way in the name of the Lord of spirits, forever and ever. The Book of Revolutions of the Lights of Heaven, each as it is, according to their classes, according to their period of rule and their times, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months. That Uriel, the holy angel who was with me and is their leader, showed to me. And he showed me all their regulations exactly as they are for each year of the world and forever, until the new creation shall be made, which will last forever. And this is the first law of the lights. The light called the sun, its rising is in the gates of heaven that are towards the east, and its setting is in the western gates of heaven. And I saw 6 gates from which the sun rises, and 6 gates in which the sun sets, and the moon also rises and sets in those gates. And the leaders of the stars together with those whom they lead, there are 6 in the east and 6 in the west, all exactly in place, one next to the other. And there are many windows to the south and the north of those gates. And first there rises the greater light, named the sun, and its disk is like the disk of heaven, and the whole of it is full of a fire which gives light and warmth. The wind blows the chariots on which it ascends, and the sun goes down in the sky and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is led so that it comes to the appropriate gate and shines in the sky. In this way it rises in the first month, in the large gate, namely, it rises through the fourth of those 6 gates that are towards the east. And in that fourth gate, through which the sun rises, in the first month, there are 12 window openings from which, whenever they are opened, flames come out. When the sun rises in heaven, it goes out through that fourth gate for 30 days, and exactly in the fourth gate, in the west of heaven, it goes down. And in those days, the day grows daily longer, and the night grows nightly shorter, until the 13th morning. And on that day, the day becomes longer than the night by a double part, and the day amounts to exactly 10 parts, and the night amounts to 8 parts. And the sun rises from that fourth gate and sets in the fourth gate, and returns to the 5th gate in the east for 30 mornings, and it rises from it and sets in the 5th gate. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts, and the day amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. And the sun returns to the east and comes to the 6th gate and rises and sets in the 6th gate for 31 mornings because of its sign. And on that day, the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day amounts to 12 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 6 parts. And the sun rises up so that the day may grow shorter, and the night longer. And the sun returns to the east, and it comes to the 6th gate, and rises from it, and sets for 30 mornings. And when 30 mornings have been completed, the day becomes shorter, by exactly 1 part, and the day amounts to 11 parts, and the night to 7 parts. And the sun goes out from the west, through that 6th gate, and goes to the east, and rises in the 5th gate for 30 mornings, and it sets in the west again, in the 5th gate in the west. On that day, the day becomes shorter by 2 parts, and the day amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. And the sun rises from that 5th gate and sets in the 5th gate in the west, and rises in the 4th gate for 31 mornings because of its sign, and sets in the west. On that day, the day becomes equal with the night, and is of equal length, and the night amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the sun rises from that gate and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the 3rd gate for 30 mornings, and sets in the west in the 3rd gate. And the sun rises from that 3rd gate, and sets in the 3rd gate in the west, and returns to the east, and the sun rises in the 2nd gate in the east for 30 mornings, and likewise it sets in the 2nd gate in the west of heaven. And on that day the night amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. And the sun rises on that day from the second gate, and sets in the west in the second gate, and returns to the east for the first gate for 31 mornings, then sets in the west in the first gate. And on that day the night becomes longer and becomes double the day, and the night amounts to exactly 12 parts, and the day to 6 parts. And with this the sun has completed the division of its journey, and it turns back again along the divisions of its journey, and it comes through that first gate for 30 mornings and sets in the west opposite it. And on that day the night becomes shorter in length by 1 part, and amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. And the sun returns and comes to the second gate in the east, and it returns along those divisions of its journey for 30 mornings, rising and setting. And on that day the night becomes shorter in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. And on that day the sun rises from the second gate and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the third gate for 31 mornings, and sets in the west of the sky. And on that day the night becomes shorter and amounts to 9 parts, and the day amounts to 9 parts, and the night becomes equal with the day. And the year amounts to exactly 364 days. And the length of the day and the night, and the shortness of the day and the night, they are different because of the journey of the sun. Because of it, its journey becomes daily longer and nightly shorter. And this is the law and the journey of the sun and its return. As often as it returns, 60 times it returns and rises. That is the great eternal light, which forever and ever is named the sun. And this that rises is the great light, which is named after its appearance, as the Lord commanded. And thus it rises and sets. It neither decreases nor rests, but runs day and night in its chariot. And its light is 7 times brighter than that of the moon, but in size the two are equal. And after this law I saw another law, for the lesser light, named the moon. And its disk is like the disk of the sun, and the wind blows its chariot on which it rides, and in fixed measure light is given to it. And every month its rising and setting change, and its days are as the days of the sun. And when its light is uniformly full, it is a 7th part the light of the sun. And thus it rises, and its first phase is towards the east. It rises on the 30th morning, and on that day it appears and becomes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th morning, together with the sun in the gate through which the sun rises. And a half with a 7th part, and its entire disk is empty, without light except for a 7th part, a 14th part of its light. And on the day that it receives a 7th and a half of its light amounts to a 7th, and a 7th part and a half. It sets with the sun, and when the sun rises, the moon rises with it, and receives a half of 1 part of light. And on that night, at the beginning of its morning, at the beginning of the moon's day, the moon sets with the sun, and is dark on that night in 6 and 7 parts and a half. And it rises on that day with exactly a 7th part, goes out, recedes from the rising of the sun, and becomes bright on the remainder of its days in the other 6 and 7 parts. And another journey and law I saw for it, in that according to this law it makes its monthly journey. And Uriel, the holy angel who is leader of them all, showed me everything, and I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me. And I wrote down their months as they are, and the appearance of their light, until 15 days have been completed. In 7th parts it makes all its darkness full, and in 7th parts it makes all its light full, in the east and in the west. And in certain months it changes its setting, and in certain months it follows its own individual course. In 2 months it sets with the sun, in those 2 gates that are in the middle, in the 3rd and in the 4th gate. It goes out for 7 days and turns back, and returns again to the gate from which the sun rises. And in that gate it makes all its light full, and it recedes from the sun, and comes in 8 days to the 6th gate from which the sun rises. And when the sun rises from the 4th gate, the moon goes out for 7 days until it rises from the 5th gate. And again, it returns in 7 days to the 4th gate, makes all its light full, recedes and comes to the first gate in 8 days. And again it returns in 7 days to the fourth gate from which the sun rises. Thus I saw their positions, how the moon rose and how the sun set in those days. And if 5 years are added together, the sun has an excess of 30 days. For each year of the 5 years, there are 364 days. And the excess of the sun and the stars comes to 6 days. In 5 years, with 6 days each, they have an excess of 30 days, and the moon falls behind the sun and the stars by 30 days. And the moon conducts the years exactly, all of them to their eternal positions. They are neither early nor late, even by 1 day, but change the year in exactly 364 days. In 3 years, there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years, there's 1,820 days, so that in 8 years, there are 2,912 days. For the moon alone, the days in 3 years comes to 1,062 days, and in 5 years, it is 50 days behind. And there are 1,770 days in 5 years, so that for the moon, the days in 8 years amount to 2,832 days. For the difference in 8 years is 80 days, and all the days that the moon is behind in 8 years are 80 days. And the year is completed exactly in accordance with their positions and the positions of the sun, in that they rise from the gates from which the sun rises and sets for 30 days. And the leaders of the tens of thousands, who are in charge of the whole of creation and in charge of all the stars, and also the 4 days which are added, and are not separated from their position according to the whole reckoning of the year. And these serve on the 4 days that are not counted in the reckoning of the year. And because of them, men go wrong in them. For these lights really serve in the stations of the world, one in the first gate, and one in the third gate, and one in the fourth gate, and one in the sixth gate. And the exact harmony of the world is completed in the separate 364 stations of the world. For the signs and the times and the years and the days were showed to me by the angel Uriel, whom the Lord of eternal glory has placed in charge of all the lights of heaven, in heaven and in the world, so that they might rule on the face of heaven and appear over the earth and be leaders of day and night, the sun and the moon, the stars, and all the serving creatures who revolve in all the chariots of heaven. Likewise, Uriel showed to me 12 gate openings in the disk of the chariot of the sun in the sky, from which the rays of the sun came out. And from them heat comes out over the earth when they are opened at the times that are appointed for them. And there are openings for the winds and for the spirit of the dew when they are opened at their times, opened in heaven at the ends of the earth. I saw 12 gates in heaven at the ends of the earth, from which the sun and the moon and the stars and all the works of heaven go out in the east and in the west. And there are many window openings to the north and to the south, and each window at its appointed time sends out heat corresponding to those gates, from which the stars go out in accordance with his command to them, and which they set according to their number. And I saw chariots in heaven running through the region above those gates in which the stars that never set rotate. And one is bigger than all the others, and it goes round through the whole world. And at the ends of the earth I saw 12 gates open to all the winds, from which the winds come out and blow over the earth. 3 of them open in the front of heaven, and 3 in the back, and 3 on the right of heaven, and 3 on the left. And the 3 first are those towards the east, and then the 3 towards the north, and the 3 after those towards the south, and the 3 in the west. Through 4 of them come winds of blessing and peace, and from the other 8 come winds of punishment. When they are sent, they bring devastation to the whole earth, to the water which is on it, and to all those who dwell upon it, and to everything that is in the water and on dry ground. And the first wind from those gates, called the east wind, comes out through the first gate, which is towards the east. The one that comes from the south brings devastation, drought, heat, and destruction. And through the second gate in the middle comes what is right. And from it come rain and fruitfulness and prosperity and dew. And through the third gate, which is towards the north, comes cold and drought. And after these, the winds towards the south come out through 3 gates. First, through the first of the gates, which inclines towards the east, comes a hot wind. And through the middle gate, which is next to it, come pleasant fragrances and dew and rain and prosperity and life. And through the third gate, which is towards the west, come dew and rain and locusts and devastation. And after these, the winds towards the north. From the seventh gate, which is towards the east, come dew and rain, locusts and devastation. And through the gate exactly in the middle come rain and dew and life and prosperity. And through the third gate, which is towards the west, come mist and hoarfrost and snow and rain and dew and locusts. And after these, the winds towards the west. Through the first gate, which inclines towards the north, come dew and rain and hoarfrost and cold and snow and frost. And from the middle gate come dew and rain, prosperity and blessing. And through the last gate, which is towards the south, come drought and devastation, burning and destruction. And thus the 12 gates of the 4 quarters of heaven are complete. And all of their laws and all of their punishments and all their benefits I have shown to you, my son Methuselah. They called the first quarter eastern because it is the first. And they called the second the south because there the Most High descends, and there especially the one who is blessed forever descends. And the western quarter is called waning because there all the lights of heaven wane and go down. And the fourth quarter, named the north, is divided into 3 parts. And the first of them is the dwelling place for men, and the second contains seas of water, and the deeps, and the forest, and the rivers, and darkness and mist. And the third part contains the garden of righteousness. I saw 7 high mountains, which were higher than all other mountains on the earth, and from them snow comes, and days and times and years pass away and go by. I saw 7 rivers on the earth, larger than all the other rivers. One of them comes from the east and pours out its waters into the great sea. And 2 of them come from the north to the sea and pour out their water into the Erythraean Sea in the east. And the remaining 4 flow out on the side of the north to their seas, 2 to the Erythraean Sea and 2 into the great sea, and they discharge themselves there and not into the wilderness, as some say. I saw 7 large islands in the sea and on the land, 2 on the land and 5 in the great sea. The names of the sun are as follows: the first, Orieres; the second, Tomasis. The moon has 4 names. The first name is Asanya, and the second, Ebla, and the third, Benace, and the fourth, Irae. These are the 2 great lights. Their disk is like the disk of heaven, and in size the 2 are equal. In the disk of the sun are 7 parts of light, which are added to it more than to the moon. And in fixed measure, light is transferred to the moon until a 7th part of the sun is exhausted. And they set, go into the gates of the west, go round through the north, and rise through the gates of the east on the face of heaven. And when the moon rises, it appears in the sky, and has half of a 7th part of light, and on the 14th day it makes all its light full. And 15 parts of light are transferred to it, until on the 15th day its light is full, according to the sign of the year, and amounts to 15 parts. And the moon comes into being by halves of a 7th part. And in its waning on the first day, it decreases to 14 parts of its light, and on the second to 13 parts, and on the third to 12 parts, on the fourth to 11 parts, and on the 5th to 10 parts, and on the 6th to 9 parts, and on the 7th to 8 parts, and on the 8th to 7 parts, and on the 9th to 6 parts, and on the 10th to 5 parts, and on the 11th to 4 parts, and on the 12th to the 3, and on the 13th to 2, and on the 14th to half of a 7th part. And all the light that remains from the total disappears on the 15th day. And in certain months the moon has 29 days, and once 28. And Uriel showed me another law, when light is transferred to the moon, and on which side it is transferred from the sun. All the time that the moon is increasing in its light, it transfers as it becomes opposite the sun, until in 14 days its light is full in the sky. And when it is all ablaze, its light is full in the sky. And on the first day it is called the new moon, for on that daylight rises on it. And its light becomes fully exactly on the day that as the sun goes down in the west, it rises from the east for the night. And the moon shines for the whole night until the sun rises opposite it, and the moon is seen opposite the sun. And on the side on which the light of the moon appears, there again it wanes until all its light disappears, and the days of the moon end, and its disk remains empty without light. And for 3 months, at its proper time, it achieves 30 days, and for 3 months it achieves 29 days, during which it completes its waning in the first period, in the first gate, 127 days. And in the time of its rising for 3 months, it appears in each month with 30 days. And for 3 months, it appears in each month with 29 days. By night, for 20 days each time, it looks like a man, and by day, like heaven, for there is nothing else in it except its light. And now, my son Methuselah, I have shown you everything, and the whole law of the stars of heaven is complete. And he showed me the whole law for these, for every day, and for every time, and for every rule, and for every year, and for the end thereof, according to its command for every month and every week. And the waning of the moon, which occurs in the 6th gate, for in that 6th gate its light becomes full, and after that it is the beginning of the month. And the waning, which occurs in the 1st gate, at its proper time, until 127 days are complete, or by weeks, 25 weeks and 2 days, and how it falls behind the sun, according to the law of the stars, by exactly 5 days in one period of time, when it has completed the pathway you have seen. Such is the appearance and likeness of every light which Uriel, the great angel who is their leader, showed me. And in those days Uriel answered me and said to me, Behold, I have shown you everything, O Enoch, and I have revealed everything to you, so that you may see the sun and this moon, and those who lead the stars of heaven, and all those who turn them, their task, and their times, and their rising. But in the days of the sinners, the years will become shorter, and their seed will be late on their land, and on their fields. And all things on the earth will change, and will not appear at their proper time, and the rain will be withheld, and heaven will retain it. And in those times the fruits of the earth will be late, and will not grow at their proper time, and the fruits of the trees will be withheld at their proper time. And the moon will change its customary practice, and will not appear at its proper time. But in those days it will appear in heaven, come on top of a large chariot in the west, and shine with more than normal brightness. And many heads of the stars in command will go astray, and these will change their courses and their activities, and will not appear at the times that have been prescribed for them. And the entire law of the stars will be closed to the sinners, and the thoughts of those who dwell upon the earth will go astray over them, and they will turn from all their ways and will go astray, and will think them gods. And many evils will overtake them, and punishment will come upon them to destroy them all. And he said to me, O Enoch, look at the book of the tablets of heaven, and read what is written upon them, and not every individual fact. And I looked at everything that was written, and I noted everything. And I read the book and everything that was written in it, all the deeds of men, and all the children of flesh who will be upon the earth for all the generations of eternity. And then I immediately blessed the Lord, the eternal King of glory, in that he has made all the works of the world. And I praised the Lord because of his patience, and I blessed him on account of the sons of Adam. And at that time I said, Blessed is the man who dies righteous and good, concerning whom no book of iniquity has been written, and against whom no guilt has been found. And these 3 holy ones brought me and set me on the earth in front of the door of my house, and said to me, Tell everything to your son Methuselah, and show all your children that no flesh is righteous before the Lord, for he created them. For 1 year we will leave you with your children until you have regained your strength, so that you may teach your children and write these things down for them and testify to all your children. And in the 2nd year we will take you from amongst them. Let your heart be strong, for the good will proclaim righteousness to the good. The righteous will rejoice with the righteous, and they will wish each other well. But the sinner will die with the sinner, and the apostate will sink with the apostate. And those who practice righteousness will die because of the deeds of men, and will be gathered in because of the deeds of the impious. And in those days they finished speaking to me, and I went to my family as I blessed the Lord of ages. And now, my son Methuselah, all these things I recount to you and write down for you. I have revealed everything to you and have given you books about all these things. Keep, my son Methuselah, the books from the hand of your father, so that you may pass them on to the generations of eternity. I have given wisdom to you and to your children and to those who will be your children, that they may give it to their children, for all the generations forever, this wisdom that is beyond their thoughts. And those who understand it will not sleep, but will incline their ears that they may learn this wisdom, and it will be better for those who eat from it than good food. Blessed are all the righteous, blessed are all those who walk in the way of righteousness and do not sin like the sinners. In the numbering of all their days in which the sun journeys in heaven, coming in and out through the gates of heaven for 30 days. With the leaders of the thousands of this order of stars, and with the 4 which are added and divided between the 4 seasons of the year, which lead them and appear with them on 4 days. Because of them men go wrong, and they do not reckon them in the reckoning of the whole year. For men go wrong in respect of them, and do not know them exactly. For they belong in the reckoning of the year, and are truly recorded forever, one in the first gate, and one in the third, and one in the fourth, and one in the sixth. And the year is completed in 364 days. And the account of it is true, and the recorded reckoning of it is exact, for the lights, and the months, and the feast, and the years, and the days. Uriel showed me and inspired me, he to whom the Lord of the whole created world gave commands about the host of heaven for me. And he has power in heaven, over night and day, to cause light to shine on men, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the powers of heaven which rotate in their orbits. And this is the law of the stars, which set in their places at their times, at their feast, and in their months. And these are the names of those who lead them, who keep watch, so that they appear at their times, and in their orders, and in their months, and in their periods of rule, and in their positions. Their 4 leaders, who divide the 4 parts of the year, appear first, and after them the 12 leaders of the orders, who divide the months and the years into 364 days, with the heads over thousands who separate the days. And for the 4 days that are added to them, there are the leaders who separate the 4 parts of the year. And as for these heads over thousands, one is added between the leader and the led, but their leaders make the separation. And these are the names of the leaders who separate the 4 appointed parts of the year: Melchiel, Helamelech, Melial, and Narel. And the names of those whom they lead: Adnarel, Asusael, Lumiel. These 3 follow behind the leaders of the orders, and all others follow behind the 3 leaders of the orders, who follow behind those leaders of positions who separate the 4 parts of the year. In the beginning of the year, Melchiel rises first and rules, who is called the southern sun, and all the days of his period during which he rules are 91. And these are the signs of the days that are to be seen on the earth in the days of his period of rule: sweat, and heat, and calm. And all the trees bear fruit, and leaves appear on all the trees, and the wheat harvest, and rose flowers. And all the flowers bloom in the field, but the trees of winter are withered. And these are the names of the leaders who are under them: Berkiel, Zelabziel, and another one who is added, a head over 1,000, named Heloyasip. And the days of the period of rule of this one are complete. The second leader after him is Helamelech, whom they call the shining sun, and all the days of his light are 91. And these are the signs of the days on earth: heat and drought. And the trees bring their fruit to ripeness and maturity, and make their fruit dry. And the sheep mate and become pregnant. And men gather all the fruits of the earth, and everything that is in the fields, and the vats of wine. And these things occur in the days of his period of rule. And these are the names, and the orders, and the leaders of these heads over thousands: Gedaliah, Keel, and Heel. And the name of the head over 1,000, who is added to them, is Asphael. and the days of his period of rule are complete. And now, my son Methuselah, I will show you all the visions that I saw, recounting them before you. 2 visions I saw before I took a wife, and neither one was like the other. For the first time when I learnt the art of writing, and for the second time before I took your mother. I saw a terrible vision, and concerning this I made supplication to the Lord. I had lain down in the house of my grandfather, Malalel, when I saw in a vision how heaven was thrown down and removed, and it fell upon the earth. And when it fell upon the earth, I saw how the earth was swallowed up in a great abyss, and mountains were suspended on mountains, and hills sank down upon hills, and tall trees were torn up by their roots, and were thrown down and sank into the abyss. And then speech fell into my mouth, and I raised my voice to cry out and said, "The earth is destroyed." And my grandfather Malalel roused me, since I lay near him, and said to me, "Why did you cry out so, my son, and why do you moan so?" And I recounted to him the whole vision which I had seen, and he said to me, "A terrible thing you have seen, my son. Your dream vision concerns the secrets of all the sin of the earth. It is about to sink into the abyss and be utterly destroyed. And now, my son, rise and make supplication to the Lord of glory, if you are faithful, that a remnant may be left on the earth, and that he may not wipe out the whole earth. My son, from heaven all this will come upon the earth, and upon the earth there will be great destruction." And then I rose and prayed and made supplication and wrote my prayer down for the generations of eternity. And I will show everything to you, my son Methuselah. And when I went out below and saw the sky, and the sun rising in the east, and the moon setting in the west, and some stars, and the whole earth, and everything as he knew it since the beginning, then I blessed the Lord of judgment and ascribed majesty to him. For he makes the sun come out from the windows of the east, so that it ascends and rises on the face of heaven, and follows the path which has been shown to it. And I raised my hands in righteousness, and I blessed the Holy and Great One. And I spoke with the breath of my mouth, and with the tongue of flesh, which God has made for men born of flesh, so that they might speak with it. And he has given them breath and a tongue and a mouth, so that they might speak with them. Blessed are you, O Lord King, and great and powerful in your majesty, Lord of the whole creation of heaven, King of kings, and God of the whole world. And your kingly authority and your sovereignty and your majesty will last forever and forever and ever, and your power for all generations. And all the heavens are your throne forever, and the whole earth your footstool forever and ever and ever. For you made and you rule everything, and nothing is too hard, and no wisdom escapes you. It does not turn away from your throne, nor from your presence. And you know and see and hear everything, and nothing is hidden from you, for you see everything. And now the angels of your heaven are doing wrong, and your anger rests upon the flesh of men until the day of the great judgment. And now, O God, Lord and great King, I entreat and ask that you will fulfill my prayer to leave me a posterity on earth, and not to wipe out all the flesh of men, and make the earth empty so that there is destruction forever. And now, my Lord, wipe out from the earth the flesh that has provoked your anger, but the flesh of righteousness and uprightness establish as a seed-bearing plant forever. And do not hide your face from the prayer of your servant, O Lord. And after this I saw another dream, and I will show it all to you, my son. And Enoch raised his voice and said to his son Methuselah, "To you I speak, my son, hear my words, and incline your ear to the dream vision of your father. Before I took your mother Edna, I saw a vision on my bed, and behold, a bull came out of the earth, and that bull was white. And after it, a heifer came out, and with the heifer came 2 bullocks, and one of them was black and the other red. And that black bullock struck the red one and pursued it over the earth, and from then on I could not see that red bullock. But that black bullock grew, and a heifer went with it. And I saw that many bulls came from it, which were like it, and followed behind it. And that cow, that first one, came from the presence of that first bull, seeking that red bullock, but did not find it. And then it moaned bitterly and continued to seek it. And I looked until that first bull came to it and calmed it, and from that time it did not cry out. And after this she bore another white bull, and after this she bore many black bulls and cows. And I saw in my sleep that white bull, how it likewise grew and became a large white bull. And from it came many white bulls, and they were like it. And they began to beget many white bulls that were like them, one following another. And again I looked with my eyes as I was sleeping, and I saw heaven above, and behold, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and ate and pastured among those bulls. And after this I saw the large and the black bulls, and behold, all of them changed their pens and their pastures and their heifers, and they began to moan one after another. And again I saw in the vision and looked up at heaven, and behold, I saw many stars, how they came down and were thrown down from heaven to that first star, and fell amongst those heifers and bulls. They were with them, pasturing amongst them. And I looked at them and saw, and behold, all of them let out their private parts like horses, and began to mount the cows of the bulls. And they all became pregnant, and bore elephants, camels, and asses. And all the bulls were afraid of them, and were terrified in front of them. And they began to bite with their teeth, and to devour and to gore with their horns. And so they began to devour those bulls, and behold, all of the sons of the earth began to tremble and shake before them, and to flee. And again I saw them, how they began to gore one another, and to devour one another, and the earth began to cry out. And I raised my eyes again to heaven, and saw in the vision, and behold, there came from heaven beings that were like white men. And 4 came from that place, and 3 others with them. And those 3 who came out last took hold of me by my hand, and raised me from the generations of the earth, and lifted me up onto a high place, and showed me a tower high above the earth, and all the hills were lower. And one said to me, Remain here until you have seen everything which is coming upon these elephants and camels and asses, and upon the stars, and upon all the bulls. And I saw one of those 4 who had come out first, how he took hold of that first star which had fallen from heaven, and bound it by its hands and feet, and threw it into an abyss. And that abyss was narrow and deep and horrible and dark. And one of them drew his sword and gave it to those elephants, camels, and asses, and they began to strike one another, and the whole earth shook because of them. And as I looked in the vision, behold, one of those 4 who had come out cast a line from heaven, and gathered and took all the large stars, those whose private parts were like the private parts of horses, and bound them all by their hands and their feet, and threw them into a chasm of the earth. And one of those 4 went to a white bull, and taught him a mystery, trembling as he was. He was born a bull, but became a man, and built for himself a large vessel, and dwelt on it. And 3 bulls went with him in that vessel, and they were covered over. And again I raised my eyes to heaven, and saw a high roof with 7 water channels on it. And those channels discharged much water into an enclosure. And again I looked, and behold, springs opened on the floor of that large enclosure, and water began to bubble up, and to rise above the floor. And I looked at that enclosure until its whole floor was covered by water. And water, darkness, and mist increased on it. And I looked at the height of that water, and that water had risen above that enclosure, and was pouring out over the enclosure, and it remained on the earth. And all the bulls of that enclosure were gathered together, until I saw how they sank, and were swallowed up and destroyed in that water. And that vessel floated on the water, but all the bulls, elephants, camels, and asses sank to the bottom, together with all the animals, so that I could not see them. And they were unable to get out, but were destroyed, and sank into the depths. And again I looked at that vision until those water channels were removed from that high roof, and the chasms of the earth were made level, and other abysses were opened. And the water began to run down into them, until the earth became visible, and that vessel settled on the earth, and the darkness departed, and light appeared. And that white bull who became a man went out from that vessel, and the 3 bulls with him. And one of the three bulls was white, like that bull, and one of them was red as blood, and one was black. And that white bull passed away from them. And they began to beget wild animals and birds, so that there arose from them every kind of species: lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, badgers, pigs, falcons, vultures, kites, eagles, and ravens. But amongst them was born a white bull. And they began to bite one another, but that white bull, which was born amongst them, begat a wild ass, and a wild bull with it, and the wild asses increased. But that bull which was born from it begat a black wild boar and a white sheep, and that wild boar begat many boars, and that sheep begat 12 sheep. And when those 12 sheep had grown, they handed one of their number over to the asses, and those in turn handed that sheep over to the wolves, and that sheep grew up amongst the wolves. And the Lord brought the 11 sheep to dwell with it, and to pasture with it amongst the wolves, and they increased and became many flocks of sheep. And the wolves began to make them afraid, and they oppressed them until they made away with their young. And then they threw their young into a river with much water. But those sheep began to cry out because of their young, and to complain to their Lord. But a sheep which had been saved from the wolves fled and escaped to the wild asses. And I saw the sheep moaning and crying out and petitioning the Lord with all of their power, until the Lord of the sheep came down at the call of the sheep from a high room, and came to them and looked at them. And he called that sheep which had fled from the wolves, and spoke to it about the wolves, that it should warn them that they should not touch the sheep. And the sheep went to the wolves in accordance with the word of the Lord, and another sheep met that sheep and went with it. And the two of them together entered the assembly of those wolves, spoke to them, and warned them that from then on they should not touch those sheep. And after this I saw the wolves, how they acted even more harshly towards the sheep, with all of their power, and the sheep called out. And their Lord came to the sheep and began to beat those wolves, and the wolves began to moan, but the sheep became silent, and from then on they did not cry out. And I looked at the sheep until they escaped from the wolves, but the eyes of the wolves were blinded, and those wolves went out in pursuit of the sheep with all of their forces. And the Lord of the sheep went with them as he led them, and all his sheep followed him. And his face was glorious, and his appearance terrible and magnificent. But the wolves began to pursue those sheep until they met them by a stretch of water. And that stretch of water was divided, and the water stood on one side and on the other before them. And their Lord, as he led them, stood between them and the wolves. And while those wolves had not yet seen the sheep, they went into the middle of that stretch of water. But the wolves pursued the sheep, and those wolves ran after them into that stretch of water. But when they saw the Lord of the sheep, they turned to flee in front of him. But that stretch of water flowed together again, and suddenly resumed its natural form, and the water swelled up and rose until it covered those wolves. And I looked until all the wolves that had pursued those sheep were destroyed and drowned. But the sheep escaped that water and went to a desert where there was neither water nor grass. And they began to open their eyes and see, and I saw the Lord of the sheep pasturing them and giving them water and grass, and that sheep going and leading them. And that sheep went up to the summit of a high rock, and the Lord of the sheep sent it to them. And after this, I saw the Lord of the sheep standing before them, and his appearance was terrible and majestic. And all those sheep saw him and were afraid of him. And all of them were afraid and trembled before him. And they cried out to that sheep with those who were in their midst, "We cannot stand before our Lord, nor look at him." And that sheep which led them again went up to the summit of that rock. And the sheep began to be blinded and go astray from the path which had been shown to them. But that sheep did not know. And the Lord of the sheep was extremely angry with them, and that sheep knew, and went down from the summit of the rock, and came to the sheep, and found the majority of them with their eyes blinded and going astray from the path. And when they saw it, they were afraid and trembled before it, and wished that they could return to their enclosure. And that sheep took some other sheep with it, and went to those sheep that had gone astray, and then began to kill them. and the sheep were afraid of it. And that sheep brought back those sheep that had gone astray, and they returned to their enclosures. And I looked there at the vision until that sheep became a man, and built a house of the Lord of the sheep, and made all the sheep stand in that house. And I looked until that sheep, which had met that sheep that led the sheep, fell asleep. And I looked until all the large sheep were destroyed, and small ones arose in their place, and they came to a pasture and drew near a river of water. And that sheep that led them, which had become a man, separated from them and fell asleep, and all the sheep saw it, and cried out very bitterly over it. And I looked until they left off crying for that sheep, and crossed that river of water. And there arose all the sheep that led them, in place of those which had fallen asleep, and they led. And I looked until the sheep came to a good place, and a pleasant and glorious land, and I looked until those sheep were satisfied, and that house was in the middle of them in that green and pleasant land. And sometimes their eyes were opened, and sometimes blinded, until another sheep rose up, led them, and brought them all back, and their eyes were opened. And the dogs and the foxes and the wild boars began to devour those sheep, until the Lord of the sheep raised up a ram from among them, which led them. And that ram began to butt those dogs, foxes, and wild boars on one side and on the other, until it had destroyed them all. And the eyes of that sheep were opened, and it saw that ram in the middle of the sheep, how it renounced its glory, and began to butt those sheep, and how it trampled on them and behaved unbecomingly. And the Lord of the sheep sent the sheep to another sheep, and raised it up to be a ram, and to lead the sheep in place of that sheep which had renounced its glory. And it went to it, and spoke with it alone, and raised up that ram, and made it the prince and leader of the sheep. And during all of this, those dogs oppressed the sheep. And the first ram pursued that second ram, and that second ram rose and fled before it. And I looked until those dogs made the first ram fall. And that second ram rose up and led the small sheep, and that ram begat many sheep and fell asleep. And a small sheep became a ram in place of it, and became the prince and leader of those sheep. And those sheep grew and increased, but all the dogs and foxes and wild boars were afraid and fled from it. And that ram butted and killed all the animals, and those animals did not again prevail amongst the sheep, and did not seize anything further from them. And that house became large and broad, and for those sheep a high tower was built on that house for the Lord of the sheep. And that house was low, but the tower was raised up and high. And the Lord of the sheep stood on that tower, and they spread a full table before him. And I saw those sheep again, how they went astray and walked in many ways, and left that house of theirs. And the Lord of the sheep called some of the sheep and sent them to the sheep, but the sheep began to kill them. But one of them was saved and was not killed, and it sprang away and cried out against the sheep. And they wished to kill it, but the Lord of the sheep saved it from the hands of the sheep, brought it up to me, and made it stay. And he sent many other sheep to those sheep to testify to them and to lament over them. And after this, I saw how when they left the house of the Lord of the sheep and his tower, they went astray in everything, and their eyes were blinded. And I saw how the Lord of the sheep wrought much slaughter among them in their pastures, until those sheep invited that slaughter and betrayed his place. And he gave them into the hands of the lions and the tigers and the wolves and the hyenas, and into the hands of the foxes, to all the animals. And those wild animals began to tear those sheep in pieces. And I saw how he left that house of theirs and their tower, and gave them all into the hands of the lions, so that they might tear them in pieces and devour them, and into the hands of all the animals. And I began to cry out with all my power, to call the Lord of the sheep, and to represent to him concerning the sheep, that all the wild animals were devouring them. But he remained still, although he saw, and he rejoiced that they were devoured, swallowed up, and carried off. And he gave them into the hands of all the animals for food. And he called 70 shepherds, and cast off those sheep, so they might find pasture with them. And he said to the shepherds and to their companions, each one of you from now on is to pasture the sheep, and do whatever I command you. and I will hand them over to you, duly numbered, and I will tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and destroy them. And he handed those sheep over to them. And he called another and said to him, Observe and see everything that these shepherds do against these sheep, for they will destroy from among them more than I have commanded them. And write down all the excess and destruction which is wrought by the shepherds, how many they destroy at my command, and how many they destroy of their own volition. Write down against each shepherd individually all that he destroys, and read out in front of me exactly how many they destroy of their own volition, and how many are handed over for destruction, so that this may be a testimony for me against them, so that I may know all the deeds of the shepherds in order to hand them over for judgment. And I will see what they...
Yeah, I need to, I didn't take my vitamins yesterday. I got up to take them, and I had some elderberry, in a tonic. And I'm gonna take me a sip of elderberry. So, see, that's mostly what I try to do, take the vitamins. So I'm mostly about that herbal, healing. I don't like taking all that medicine stuff. I take my insulin but he talking about high cholesterol and all that. I don't take all that mess. I try to make sure I take that insulin, but I don't take it like they want me to take it. Shit, they want me to take, what's that, True Livia or something like that. I have to take that once a week. Then they got another one I'm supposed to take once a day. And then another one I'm supposed to take 3 times a day. I ain't gonna take all that mess.
Whether they abide by my command with which I have commanded them or not. But they must not know this, and you must not show this to them, but only write down against each individual in his time all that the shepherds destroy, and bring it all up to me. And I looked until those shepherds pastured at their times, and they began to kill and destroy more than they were commanded, and they gave those sheep into the hands of the lions. And the lions and the tigers devoured and swallowed up the majority of those sheep, and the wild boars devoured with them, and they burnt down that tower and demolished that house. And I was extremely sad about that tower, because that house of the sheep had been demolished, and that I was unable to see whether those sheep went into that house. And the shepherds and their companions handed those sheep over to all the animals so that they might devour them. Each one of them at his time received an exact number, and for each of them, one after the other, there was written in a book how many of them were destroyed. And each one killed and destroyed more than was prescribed, and I began to weep and moan very much because of those sheep. And likewise, in the vision, I saw that one who wrote how each day he wrote down each one that was destroyed by those shepherds. And he brought up and presented the whole book to the Lord of the sheep, everything they had done, and all that each of them had made away with, and all that they had handed to destruction. And the book was read out in front of the Lord of the sheep. And he took the book in his hand, read it, sealed it, and put it down. And after this, I saw how the shepherds pastured for 12 hours. And behold, 3 of those sheep returned and arrived, and came and began to build up all that had fallen down from that house. But the wild boars hindered them so that they could not. And they again began to build as before, and they raised up that tower, and it was called the High Tower. And they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread on it was unclean and was not pure. And besides all this, the eyes of the sheep were blinded, so they could not see, and their shepherds likewise. And they handed yet more of them over to destruction, and they trampled on the sheep with their feet and devoured them. But the Lord of the sheep remained still, until all the sheep were scattered abroad and had mixed with them, and did not save them from the hands of the animals. And that one who wrote the book brought it up, showed it, and read it out in the dwelling of the Lord of the sheep. And he entreated him on behalf of them, and petitioned him, and he showed him all the deeds of their shepherds, and testified in front of him against all the shepherds. And he took the book, put it down by him, and went out. And I looked until the time that 35 shepherds had pastured the sheep the same way, and each individually. They all completed their time like the first ones. And others received them into their hands to pasture them at their time, each shepherd at his own time. And after this, I saw in the vision all the birds of the sky coming, the eagles, the vultures, and the kites, and the ravens. But the eagles led all the birds, and they began to devour those sheep, to peck out their eyes, and to devour their flesh. And the sheep cried out because the birds devoured their flesh. And I cried out and lamented in my sleep because of that shepherd who pastured the sheep. And I looked until those sheep were devoured by those dogs, and by the eagles, and by the kites, and they left them neither flesh nor skin, nor sinew, until their bones remained. And their bones fell upon the ground, and the sheep became few. And I looked until the time that 23 shepherds had pastured, and they completed, each in his time, 58 times. And small lambs were born from those white sheep, and they began to open their eyes to see, and to cry to the sheep. But the sheep did not cry to them, and did not listen to what they said to them, but were extremely deaf, and their eyes were extremely and excessively blinded. And I saw in the vision how the ravens flew upon those lambs, and took one of those lambs, and dashed the sheep into pieces, and devoured them. And I looked until horns came up on those lambs, but the ravens cast their horns down. And I looked until a big horn grew on one of those sheep, and their eyes were opened. And it looked at them, and their eyes were opened. And it cried to the sheep, and the rams saw it, and they all ran to it. And besides all this, those eagles and vultures and ravens and kites were still continually tearing the sheep in pieces, and flying upon them and devouring them. And the sheep were silent, but the rams lamented and cried out. And those ravens battled and fought with it, and wished to make away with its horn, but they did not prevail against it. And I looked at them until the shepherds and the eagles and those vultures and kites came and cried to the ravens that they should dash the horn of that ram in pieces. And they fought and battled with it, and it fought with them and cried out so that its help might come to it. And I looked until that man who wrote down the names of the shepherds and brought them up before the Lord of the sheep came. And he helped that ram and showed it everything. Its help was coming down. And I looked until that Lord of the sheep came to them in anger. All those who saw him fled, and they all fell into the shadow in front of him. All the eagles and vultures and ravens and kites gathered together and brought with them all the wild sheep. And they all came together and helped one another in order to dash that horn of the ram in pieces. And I looked at that man who wrote the book at the command of the Lord until he opened that book of the destruction that those last 12 shepherds had wrought. And he showed in front of the Lord of the sheep that they had destroyed even more than those before them had. And I looked until the Lord of the sheep came to them and took the staff of his anger and struck the earth, and the earth was split. And all the animals and the birds of the sky fell from those sheep and sank in the earth, and it closed over them. And I looked until a big sword was given to the sheep, and the sheep went out against all the wild animals to kill them. And all the animals and birds of the sky fled before them. And I looked until a throne was set up in a pleasant land, and the Lord of the sheep sat on it. And they took all the sealed books and opened the books in front of the Lord of the sheep. And the Lord called those men, the 7 first white ones, and commanded them to bring in front of him the first star, which went before those stars whose private parts were like horses, and they brought them all in front of him. And he said to that man who wrote in front of him, who was one of the 7 white ones, he said to him, "Take those 70 shepherds to whom I handed over the sheep, and who, on their own authority, took and killed more than I commanded them. And behold, I saw them all bound, and they all stood in front of him. And the judgment was held first on the stars, and they were judged and found guilty, and they went to the place of damnation, and were thrown into a deep place full of fire burning, and full of pillars of fire. And those 70 shepherds were judged and found guilty, and they also were thrown into that abyss of fire. And I saw at that time how a similar abyss was opened in the middle of the earth, which was full of fire. And they brought those blind sheep, and they were all judged and found guilty and thrown into that abyss of fire, and they burned. And that abyss was on the south of that house. And I saw those sheep burning, and their bones were burning. And I stood up to look until he folded up that old house, and they removed all the pillars, and all the beams and ornaments of that house were folded up with it. And they removed it and put it in a place in the south of the land. And I looked until the Lord of the sheep brought a new house, larger and higher than the first one, and he set it up on the site of the first one that had been folded up. And all its pillars were new, and its ornaments were new, and larger than those of the first one, the old one that had been removed. And the Lord of the sheep was in the middle of it. And I saw all the sheep that were left, and all the animals of the earth, and all the birds of the sky, falling down and worshiping those sheep, and entreating them and obeying them in every command. And after this, those three who were dressed in white and had taken hold of my hand, the ones who had brought me up at first, they with the hand of that ram also holding me took me up and put me down in the middle of those sheep before the judgment was held. And those sheep were all white, and their wool thick and pure. And all those which had been destroyed and scattered, and all the wild animals and all the birds of the sky gathered together in that house. And the Lord of the sheep rejoiced very much, because they were all good and had returned to his house. And I looked until they had laid down that sword which had been given to the sheep, and they brought it back into his house, and it was sealed in front of the Lord. And all the sheep were enclosed in that house, but it did not hold them. And the eyes of all of them were opened, and they all saw well, and there was not one among them that did not see. And I saw that that house was large, broad, and exceptionally full. And I saw how a white bull was born, and its horns were big, and all the wild animals and all the birds of the sky were afraid of it, and entreated it continually. And I looked until all their species were transformed, and they all became white bulls. And the first among them was a wild ox. And that wild ox was a large animal and had big black horns on its head. And the Lord of the sheep rejoiced over them and over all the bulls. Right. And I was asleep in the middle of them, and I woke up and saw everything. And this is the vision which I saw while I was asleep. And I woke up, blessed the Lord of righteousness, and ascribed glory to him. But after this I wept bitterly, and my tears did not stop until I could not endure it. When I looked, they ran down because of what I saw. For everything will come to pass and be fulfilled, and all the deeds of men in their order were shown to me. That night I remembered my first dream, and because of it I wept and was disturbed, because I had seen that vision. And now, my son Methuselah, call to me all your brothers, and gather to me all the children of your mother. For a voice calls me, and a spirit has been poured over me, so that I may show you everything that will come upon you forever. And after this, Methuselah went and called his brothers to him, and gathered his relations. And he spoke about righteousness to all his sons, and said, Hear, my children, all the words of your father, and listen properly to the voice of my mouth. For I will testify and speak to you, my beloved. Love uprightness and walk in it. And do not draw near to uprightness with a double heart, and do not associate with those of a double heart. But walk in righteousness, my children, and it will lead you in good paths, and righteousness will be your companion. For I know the state of wrongdoing will continue on earth, and a great punishment will be carried out on the earth, and an end will be made of all iniquity, and it will be cut off at its roots, and its whole edifice will pass away. And iniquity will again be complete on the earth, and all the deeds of iniquity, and the deeds of wrong, and deeds of wickedness will prevail for a second time. And when iniquity and sin and blasphemy and wrong and all kinds of evil deeds increase, and when apostasy, wickedness, and uncleanness increase, a great punishment will come from heaven upon all these. And the Holy Lord will come in anger and in wrath to execute judgment on the earth. And in those days wrongdoing will be cut off at its roots, and the roots of iniquity together with deceit will be destroyed from under heaven. And all the idols of the nations will be given up, their towers will be burnt in fire. and they will remove them from the whole of the earth. And they will be thrown down in the judgment of fire, and will be destroyed in anger and in the severe judgment that is forever. And the righteous will rise from sleep, and wisdom will rise and will be given to them. And after this, the roots of iniquity will be cut off, and the sword will destroy the sinners. The blasphemers will be cut off. In every place, blasphemy will be destroyed by the sword.
That's what we did. We came from those from our sleep.
And after this, there will be another week, the 8th, that of righteousness, and a sword will be given to it, so that the righteous judgment may be executed on those who do wrong, and the sinners will be handed over into the hands of the righteous. And at its end, they will acquire houses because of their righteousness, and a house will be built for the great King in glory forever. And after this, in the 9th week, the righteous judgment will be revealed to the whole world. And all the deeds of the impious will vanish from the whole earth, and the world will be written down for destruction, and all men will look to the path of uprightness. And after this, in the 10th week, in the 7th part, there will be an eternal judgment that will be executed on the watchers, and the great eternal heaven that will spring from the midst of the angels. And the first heaven will vanish and pass away, and a new heaven will appear, and all the powers of heaven will shine forever with sevenfold light. And after this, there will be many weeks without number, forever in goodness and in righteousness. And from then on, sin will never again be mentioned. And now I tell you, my children, and show you the paths of righteousness and the paths of wrongdoing. And I will show you again, so that you may know what is to come. And now listen, my children, walk in the paths of righteousness, and do not walk in the paths of wrongdoing. For all those who walk in the path of iniquity will be destroyed. Written by Enoch the scribe, this complete wisdom and teaching, praised by all men, and a judge of the whole earth. For all my sons who dwell on earth, and for the last generations who will practice justice and peace. Let not your spirit be saddened by the times, for the Holy and Great One has appointed days for all things. And the righteous man will rise from sleep, will rise and will walk in the path of righteousness, and all his paths and his journeys will be eternal goodness and mercy. He will show mercy to the righteous man, and to him give eternal uprightness, and to him give power. And he will live in goodness and righteousness, and will walk in eternal light. And sin will be destroyed in darkness forever, and from that day will never again be seen. And after this, Enoch began to speak from the books. And Enoch said, concerning the sons of righteousness, and concerning the chosen of the world, and concerning the plant of righteousness and uprightness, I will speak these things to you, and make them known to you, my children. I, Enoch, according to that which appeared to me in the heavenly vision, and that which I know from the words of the holy angels, and understanding from the tablets of heaven. And Enoch then began to speak from the books, and said, I was born the 7th, in the 1st week, while justice and righteousness still lasted. And after me, in the 2nd week, great injustice will arise, and deceit will have sprung up. And in it there will be the first end, and in it a man will be saved. And after it has ended, iniquity will grow, and he will make a law for the sinners. And after this, in the 3rd week, at its end, a man will be chosen as the plant of righteous judgment, and after him will come the plant of righteousness forever. And after this, in the 4th week, at its end, visions of the righteous and holy will be seen, and a law for all generations, and an enclosure will be made for them. And after this, in the 5th week, at its end, a house of glory and sovereignty will be built forever. And after this, in the 6th week, all those who live in it will be blinded, and the hearts of them all, lacking wisdom, will sink into impiety. And in it, a man will ascend, and at its end, the house of sovereignty will be burnt with fire. And in it, the whole race of the chosen root will be scattered. And after this, in the 7th week, an apostate generation will arise, and many will be its deeds, but all its deeds will be apostasy. And at its end, the chosen righteous from the eternal plant of righteousness will be chosen, to whom will be given sevenfold teaching concerning his whole creation. For there is any man who can hear the voice of Holy One and not be disturbed? And who is there who can think his thoughts? And who is there who can look at all the works of heaven? And how should there be anyone who could understand the works of heaven and see a soul or spirit and tell about, or ascend and see all their ends and comprehend them, or make anything like them? And is there any man who could know the length and breadth of the earth, and to who has all its measurements been shown? Or is there any man who could know the length of heaven, and what's its height, and on what it is fixed, and how large is the number of stars, and where do all the lights rest? And now I say to you, my children, love righteousness and walk in it, for the paths of righteousness are worthy of acceptance, but the paths of iniquity will quickly be destroyed and vanish. And to certain men from a future generation, the paths of wrongdoing and of death will be revealed, and they will keep away from them and will not follow them. And now I say to you, the righteous, do not walk in the wicked path, or in wrongdoing, or in the paths of death, and do not draw near to them, or you may be destroyed. But seek and choose for yourself righteousness and a life that is pleasing, and walk in the paths of peace, so that you may live and prosper. And hold my words firmly in the thoughts of your heart, and do not let them be erased from your heart. For I know that sinners will tempt men to debase wisdom, and no place will be found for it, and temptation in no way decrease. Woe to those who build iniquity and found deceit, for they will quickly be thrown down and will not have peace. Woe to those who build their houses with sin, for from their own foundation they will be thrown down, and by the sword they shall fall. And those who acquire gold and silver will quickly be destroyed in the judgment. Woe to you, you rich, for you have trusted in your riches, but from your riches you will depart, from you did not remember the Most High in the days of your riches. You have committed blasphemy and iniquity, and are ready for the days of the outpouring of blood, and for the day of darkness, and for the day of the great judgment. Thus I say and make known to you, that he who created you will throw you down, and over your fall there will be no mercy, but your Creator will rejoice at your destruction. And your righteousness in those days will be a reproach to the sinners and to the impious. Would that my eyes were a rain cloud, so that I might weep over you, and pour out my tears like rain, so that I might have rest from the sorrow of my heart. Who permitted you to practice hatred and wickedness? May judgment come upon you, the sinners. Do not be afraid of the sinners, you righteous, for the Lord will again deliver them into your hands, so that you may execute judgment on them as you desire. Woe to you who pronounce anathema that you cannot remove. Healing will be far from you because of your sin. Woe to you who repay your neighbors with evil, for you will be repaid according to your deeds. Woe to you, you lying witnesses, and to those who weigh out iniquity, for you will quickly be destroyed. Woe to you, you sinners, because you persecute the righteous, for you yourselves will be handed over and persecuted, you men of iniquity, and their yoke will be heavy on you. Be hopeful, you righteous, for the sinners will quickly be destroyed before you, and you will have power over them as you desire. And in the day of the distress of the sinners, your young will rise up like eagles, and your nest will be higher than that of vultures. And you will go up, and like badgers, enter the crevices of the earth and the clefts of the rock, forever before the lawless. But they will groan and weep because of you, like satyrs. And do not be afraid, you who have suffered, for you will receive healing, and a bright light will shine upon you, and the voice of rest you will hear from heaven. Woes to you, you sinners, for your riches make you appear righteous, but your hearts prove to be sinners. And this word will be a testimony against you as a reminder of your evil deeds. Woe to you who devour the finest of the wheat, and drink the best of the water, and trample upon the humble through your power. Woe to you who drink water all the time, for you will quickly be repaid and will become exhausted and dry, for you have left the spring of life. Woe to you who commit iniquity and deceit and blasphemy. It will be a reminder of evil against you. Woe to you, you powerful, who through power oppress the righteous, for the day of your destruction will come. In those days, many good days will come for the righteous in the day of your judgment. Believe, you righteous, that the sinners will become an object of shame and will be destroyed on the day of judgment. Be it known to you, sinners, that the Most High remembers your destruction, and the angels rejoice over your destruction. What will you do, you sinners, and where will you flee on that day of judgment when you hear the sound of prayer of the righteous? But you will not be like them against whom this world will be a testimony. You have been associated.
Now they say this version that I aired, this is the Ethiopic version of the Book of Enoch, and is deemed by scholars to be older by several centuries than the Slavic one. And portions of that older version are in turn known to have been based on even older manuscripts, such as the Lost Book of Noah. Fragments of the Enoch books were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. The astronomical calendrical tale of Enoch thus goes back into great antiquity, perhaps as the Bible asserts, to pre-Diluvial times. Now, we're going to listen to the Book of Jubilee next. What you think about that one? This is going to be part one.
Please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Stephen Olson. The Book of Jubilee is translated by Robert Charles. Chapter 1. And it came to pass in the first year of the exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the 3rd month, on the 16th day of the month, that God spake to Moses, saying, Come up to me on the mount, and I will give thee 2 tables of stone of the law and of the commandment, which I have written that thou mayest teach them. And Moses went up into the mount of God, and the glory of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai, and a cloud overshadowed it 6 days. And he called to Moses on the 7th day out of the midst of the cloud, and the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a flaming fire on the top of the mount. And Moses was on the mount 40 days and 40 nights. And God taught him the earlier and the later history of the division of all the days of the law and of the testimony. And he said, Incline thine heart to every word which I shall speak to thee on this mount, and write them in a book, in order that their generations may see how I have not forsaken them for all the evil which they have wrought in transgressing the covenant which I establish between me and thee for their generations this day on Mount Sinai. And thus it will come to pass, when all these things come upon them, that they will recognize that I am more righteous than they in all their judgments and in all their actions, and they will recognize that I have been truly with them. And do thou write for thyself all these words, which I declare unto thee this day, for I know their rebellion and their stiff neck, before I bring them into the land of which I swear to their fathers, to Abraham, and to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, Unto your seed will I give a land flowing with milk and honey. And they will eat and be satisfied, and they will turn to strange gods, to gods which cannot deliver them from aught of their tribulation. And this witness shall be heard for a witness against them. For they will forget all my commandments, even all that I command them. And they will walk after the Gentiles, and after their uncleanness, and after their shame, and will serve their gods. And these will prove unto them an offense and a tribulation, and an affliction and a snare. And many will perish, and they will be taken captive, and will fall into the hands of the enemy, because they have forsaken my ordinances and my commandments, and the festivals of my covenant, and my Sabbaths, and my holy place which I have hallowed for myself in their midst, and my tabernacle, and my sanctuary, which I have hallowed for myself in the midst of the land, that I should set my name upon it, and that it should dwell there. And they will make to themselves high places and groves and graven images, and they will worship each his own graven image, so as to go astray. And they will sacrifice their children to demons, and to all the works of the error of their hearts. And I shall send witness unto them, that I may witness against them. But they will not hear, and will slay the witnesses also. And they will persecute those who seek the law, and they will abrogate and change everything so as to work evil before my eyes. And I shall hide my face from them, and I shall deliver them into the hands of the Gentiles for captivity, and for a prey, and for devouring. And I shall remove them from the midst of the land, and I shall scatter them amongst the Gentiles. And they will forget all my law, and all my commandments, and all my judgments, and will go astray as to new moons, and Sabbaths, and festivals, and jubilees, and ordinances. And after this they will turn to me from amongst the Gentiles with all their heart, and with all their soul, and with all their strength. And I shall gather them from amongst all the Gentiles, and they will seek me, so that I shall be found of them, when they seek me with all their heart and with all their soul. And I shall disclose to them abounding peace with righteousness. And I shall remove them from the plant of uprightness, with all my heart and with all my soul. And they will be for a blessing and not for a curse. And they will be the head and not the tail. And I shall build my sanctuary in their midst. And I shall dwell with them, and I shall be their God. And they will be my people in truth and righteousness. And I shall not forsake them, nor fail them, for I am the Lord their God. And Moses fell on his face and prayed and said, O Lord my God, do not forsake thy people and thy inheritance, so that they should wander in the error of their hearts, and do not deliver them into the hands of their enemies, the Gentiles, lest they should rule over them and cause them to sin against thee. Let thy mercy, O Lord, be lifted up upon thy people, and create in them an upright spirit. And let not the spirit of Beliar rule over them, to accuse them before thee, and to ensnare them from all the paths of righteousness, so that they may perish from before thy face. But they are thy people and thy inheritance, which thou hast delivered with thy great power from the hands of the Egyptians. Create in them a clean heart and a holy spirit, and let them not be ensnared in their sins from henceforth until eternity. And the Lord said unto Moses, I know their contrariness, and their thoughts, and their stiff-neckedness, and they will not be obedient till they confess their own sins, and the sins of their fathers. And after this they will turn to me in all uprightness, and with all their heart and with all their soul. And I shall circumcise the foreskin of their heart, and the foreskin of the heart of their seed. And I shall create in them a holy spirit, and I shall cleanse them, so they shall not turn away from me from that day unto eternity. And their souls will cleave to me, and to all my commandments, and they will fulfill my commandments. And I shall be their father, and they will be my children. And they will all be called children of the living God. And every angel and every spirit will know, yea, they will know that these are my children, and that I am their father in uprightness and righteousness, and that I love them. And do thou write down for thyself all these words which I declare unto thee on this mountain, the first and the last, which shall come to pass in all the divisions of the days in the law, and in the testimony, and in the weeks, and the jubilees, unto eternity, until I descend and dwell with them throughout eternity. And he said to the angel of the presence, Write for Moses from the beginning of creation till my sanctuary has been built among them for all eternity. And the Lord will appear to the eyes of all, and all will know that I am the God of Israel, and the Father of all the children of Jacob, and King on Mount Zion for all eternity. And Zion and Jerusalem will be holy. And the angel of the presence who went before the camp of Israel took the tables of the divisions of the years, from the time of the creation of the law, and of the testimony of the weeks, of the jubilees, according to the individual years, according to all the number of the jubilees, according to the individual years, from the day of the new creation, when the heavens and the earth shall be renewed, and all their creation according to the powers of the heaven, and according to all the creation of the earth, until the sanctuary of the Lord shall be made in Jerusalem on Mount Zion, and all the luminaries be renewed, for healing, and for peace, and for blessing, for all the elect of Israel, and that thus it may be from that day and unto all the days of the earth. End of chapter 1. Chapter 2 of the Book of Jubilees, translated by Robert Charles. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. And the angel of the presence spake to Moses according to the word of the Lord, saying, Write the complete history of the creation, how in 6 days the Lord God finished all his works, and all that he created, and kept Sabbath on the 7th day, and hallowed it for all ages, and appointed it as a sign for all his works. For on the first day he created the heavens, which are above, and the earth and the waters, and all the spirits which serve before him, the angel of the presence, and the angels of sanctification, and the angels of the spirit of fire, and the angels of the spirit of the winds, and the angels of the spirit of the clouds, and of darkness, and of snow, and of hail, and of hoarfrost, and the angels of the voices, and of the thunder, and of the lightning, and the angels of the spirits of cold and of heat, and of winter, and of spring, and of autumn, and of summer, and of all the spirits of his creatures, which are in the heavens and on the earth. He created the abysses and the darkness, eventide and night, and the light, dawn, and day, which he hath prepared in the knowledge of his heart. And thereupon we saw his works, and praised him, and lauded before him on account of all his works. For 7 great works did he create on the first day. And on the second day he created the firmament in the midst of the waters. And the waters were divided on that day. Half of them went up above, and half of them went down below the firmament that was in the midst over the face of the whole earth. And this was the only work God created on the second day. And on the third day he commanded the waters to pass from off the face of the whole earth into one place, and the dry land to appear. And the water did so as he commanded them, and they retired from off the face of the earth into one place outside of this firmament, and the dry land appeared. And on that day he created for them all the seas according to their separate gathering places, and all the rivers, and the gathering of the waters in the mountains and on all the earth, and all the lakes, and all the dew of the earth, and the seed which is sown, and all sprouting things, and fruit-bearing trees, and trees of the wood, and the Garden of Eden in Eden, and all plants after their kind. These 4 great works God created on the third day. And on the fourth day he created the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and set them in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon all the earth, and to rule over the day and the night, and divide the light from the darkness. And God appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, and for Sabbaths, and for months, and for feasts, and for years, and for Sabbaths of years, and for jubilees, and for all seasons of the years. And it divideth the light from the darkness, and for prosperity, that all things may prosper which shoot and grow on the earth. These 3 kinds he made on the 4th day. And on the 5th day he created great sea monsters in the depths of the waters. For these were the first things of flesh that were created by his hands, the fish and everything that moves in the waters, and everything that flies, the birds and all their kind. And the sun rose above them to prosper them, and above everything that was on the earth, everything that shoots out from the earth, and all fruit-bearing trees, and all flesh. These 3 kinds he created on the 5th day. And on the 6th day he created all the animals of the earth, and all cattle, and everything that moves on the earth. And after all this he created man. A man and a woman created he them, and gave him dominion over all that is upon the earth, and in the seas, and over everything that flies, and over beasts, and over cattle, and over everything that moves on the earth, and over the whole earth. And over all this he gave him dominion. And these 4 kinds he created on the 6th day. And there were altogether 22 kinds. And he finished all his work on the 6th day, all that is in the heavens and on the earth, and in the seas and in the abysses, and in the light and in the darkness, and in everything. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep Sabbath on the seventh day from all work. And all the angels of the presence, and all the angels of sanctification, these two great classes he hath bidden us to keep the Sabbath with him in heaven and on earth. And he said unto us, Behold, I will separate unto myself a people from among all the peoples, and these will keep the Sabbath day, and I will sanctify them unto myself as my people, and will bless them, as I have sanctified the Sabbath day, and do sanctify it unto myself. Even so shall I bless them, and they will be my people, and I shall be their God. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob from amongst all that I have seen, and have written him down as my firstborn son, and have sanctified him unto myself, forever and ever. And I will teach them the Sabbath day, that they may keep Sabbath thereon from all work. And thus he created therein a sign, in accordance with which they should keep Sabbath with us on the seventh day, to eat and to drink, and to bless him who has created all things, as he has blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people above all peoples, and that they should keep Sabbath together with us. And he caused his commands to ascend as a sweet savor, acceptable before him all the days. There were 22 heads of mankind from Adam to Jacob, and 22 kinds of work were made until the seventh day. This is blessed and holy, and the former also is blessed and holy, and this one serves with that one, for sanctification and blessing. And to this, Jacob and his seed, it was granted that they should always be the blessed and holy ones of the first testimony and law, even as he had sanctified and blessed the Sabbath day on the seventh day. He created heaven and earth and everything that he created in 6 days, and God made the seventh day holy for all his works. Therefore he commanded on its behalf that whoever does any work thereon shall die, and that he who defiles it shall surely die. Wherefore do thou command the children of Israel to observe this day, that they may keep it holy, and not do thereon any work, and not to defile it, as it is holier than all other days. And whoever profanes it shall surely die, and whoever does thereon any work shall surely die eternally, that the children of Israel may observe this day throughout their generations, and not be rooted out of the land. For it is a holy day, and a blessed day, and everyone who observes it and keeps Sabbath thereon from all his work will be holy and blessed throughout all days like unto us. Declare and say to the children of Israel the law of this day, both that they should keep Sabbath thereon, and that they should not forsake it in the error of their hearts, and that it is not lawful to do any work thereon which is unseemly, to do thereon their own pleasure, and that they should not prepare thereon anything to be eaten or drunk, and that it is not lawful to draw water, or bring in or take out thereon through their gates any burden, which they had not prepared for themselves on the 6th day in their dwellings. And they shall not bring in nor take out from house to house on that day, for that day is more holy and blessed than any Jubilee day of the Jubilees. On this we kept Sabbath in the heavens before it was made known to any flesh to keep Sabbath thereon on the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed it, but he did not sanctify all peoples and nations to keep the Sabbath thereon, but Israel alone. Them alone he permitted to eat and drink and keep Sabbath thereon on the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed this day, which he had created for a blessing, and a sanctification, and a glory above all days. This law and testimony was given to the children of Israel as a law forever unto their generations. End of chapter 2. Chapter 3 of the Book of Jubilees, translated by Robert Charles. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. And on the 6 days of the second week, we brought, according to the word of God, unto Adam all the beasts, and all the cattle, and all the birds, and everything that moves on the earth, and everything that moves in the water, according to their kinds, and according to their types. The beasts on the first day, the cattle on the second day, the birds on the third day, and all which moves on the earth on the 4th day, and that which moves in the water on the 5th day. And Adam named them all by their respective names, and as he called them, so was their name. And on these 5 days Adam saw all these, male and female, according to every kind that was on the earth. But he was alone, and found...
Prophet, you ready for the remix? You know I be remixing now. Here come the remix. Y'all know I'm famous for remixing something real quick.
By Louis Ginsberg, The Ascension of Enoch. This was not the first time Enoch had been in heaven. Once before, while he sojourned among men, he had been permitted to see all there is on earth and in the heavens. On a time when he was sleeping, a great grief came upon his heart, and he wept in his dream, not knowing what the grief meant, nor what would happen to him. And there appeared to him 2 men, very tall. Their faces shone like the sun, and their eyes were like burning lamps. And fire came forth from their lips. Their wings were brighter than gold, their hands whiter than snow. They stood at the head of Enoch's bed and called him by his name. He awoke from his sleep and hastened and made obeisance to them, and was terrified. And these men said to him, quote, "Be of good cheer, Enoch, be not afraid. The everlasting God hath sent us to thee, and lo, today thou shalt ascend with us into heaven. And tell thy sons and thy servants, and let none seek thee till the Lord bring thee back to them." End quote. Enoch did as he was told, and after he had spoken to his sons and instructed them not to turn aside from God and to keep his judgment, these 2 men summoned him and took him on their wings and placed him on the clouds, which moved higher and higher, till they set him down in the 1st heaven. Here they showed him the 200 angels who rule the stars and their heavenly service. Here he saw also the treasures of snow and ice, of clouds and dew. From there they took him to the 2nd heaven, where he saw the fallen angels imprisoned, they who obeyed not the commandments of God and took counsel of their own will. The fallen angels said to Enoch, quote, "O man of God, pray for us to the Lord." End quote. And he answered, quote, "Who am I, a mortal man, that I should pray for angels? Who knows whither I go or what awaits me?" End quote. They took him from thence to the 3rd heaven, where they showed him paradise, with all the trees of beautiful colors, and their fruits ripe and luscious, and all kinds of food which they produced, springing up with delightful fragrance. In the midst of paradise he saw the tree of life, in that place in which God rests when he comes into paradise. This tree cannot be described for its excellence and sweet fragrance, and it is beautiful, more than any created thing. And on all its sides it is like gold and crimson in appearance, and transparent as fire, and it covers everything. From its root in the garden there go forth 4 streams, which pour out honey, milk, oil, and wine, and they go down to the paradise of Eden that lies on the confines between the earthly region of corruptibility and the heavenly region of incorruptibility, and thence they go along the earth. He also saw the 300 angels who kept the garden, and with never ceasing voices and blessed singing, they serve the Lord every day. The angels leading Enoch explained to him that this place is prepared for the righteous, while the terrible place prepared for the sinners is in the northern regions of the third heaven. He saw there all sorts of tortures and impenetrable gloom, and there is no light there, but a gloomy fire is always burning, and all that place has fire on all sides, and on all sides cold and ice, thus it burns and freezes. And the angels, terrible and without pity, carry savage weapons, and their torture is unmerciful. The angels took him then to the fourth heaven, and showed him all the comings in and goings forth, and all the rays of the light of the sun and the moon. He saw the 15 myriads of angels who go out with the sun and attend him during the day, and the 1,000 angels who attend him by night. Each angel has 6 wings, and they go before the chariot of the sun, while 100 angels keep the sun warm and light it up. He saw also the wonderful and strange creatures named phoenixes and chalkidri, who attend the chariot of the sun and go with him, bringing heat and dew. They showed him also the 6 gates in the east of the fourth heaven, by which the sun goes forth, and the 6 gates in the west where he sets, and also the gates by which the moon goes out, and those by which she enters. In the middle of the fourth heaven he saw an armed host, serving the Lord with cymbals and organs and unceasing voices. In the fifth heaven he saw many hosts of the angels called Grigori. Their appearance was like men, and their size was greater than the size of the giants. Their countenances were withered, and their lips silent. On his question who they were, the angels leading him answered, quote, "These are the Grigori, who with their princes Salamiel rejected the Holy Lord." End quote. Enoch then said to the Grigori, quote, "Why wait ye, brethren, and serve ye not before the face of the Lord? And why perform ye not your duties before the face of the Lord? And anger not your Lord to the end." End quote. The Grigori listened to the rebuke, and when the trumpets resounded together with a loud call, they also began to sing with one voice, and their voices went forth before the Lord with sadness and tenderness. In the seventh heaven, he saw the 7 bands of archangels who arrange and study the revolutions of the stars and the changes of the moon and the revolution of the sun, and superintend the good.
All he talking about is astrology. It ain't too hard to damn figure that out. he talking about the heavens, he ain't doing nothing but talking about the clouds and stuff, the sun, how the sun rise, how the sun set, how the moon rise, and all that. That's all he talking about. It don't take a rocket scientist to figure that out.
For evil conditions of the world, and they arrange teachings and instructions, and sweet speaking and singing, and all kinds of glorious praise. They hold in subjection all living things, both in heaven and on earth. In the midst of them are 7 phoenixes and 7 cherubim, and 7 six-winged creatures singing with one voice. When Enoch reached the 7th heaven and saw all the fiery hosts of great archangels and incorporeal powers and lordships and principalities and powers, he was afraid and trembled with a great terror. Those leading him took hold of him and brought him into the midst of them, and said to him, quote, "Be of good cheer, Enoch, be not afraid." End quote. And they showed him the Lord from afar, sitting on his lofty throne, while all the heavenly hosts, divided in 10 classes, having approached, stood on the 10 steps according to their rank, and made obeisance to the Lord. And so they proceeded to their places in joy and mirth and boundless light, singing songs with low and gentle voices, and gloriously serving him. They leave not nor depart day or night, standing before the face of the Lord, working his will, cherubim and seraphim, standing around his throne, and the 6-winged creatures overshadow all his throne, singing with a soft voice before the face of the Lord. Quote, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Heaven and earth are full of his glory." End quote. When he had seen all these, the angels leading him said to him, quote, "Enoch, up to this time we were ordered to accompany thee." End quote. They departed, and he saw them no more. Enoch remained at the extremity of the 7th heaven in great terror, saying to himself, quote, "Woe is me, what has come upon me?" End quote. But then Gabriel came and said unto him, quote, "Enoch, be not afraid, stand up and come with me, and stand up before the face of the Lord forever." End quote. And Enoch answered, quote, "O my Lord, my spirit has departed from me with fear and trembling. Call the men to me who have brought me to this place. Upon them I have relied, and with them I would go before the face of the Lord." End quote. And Gabriel hurried him away like a leaf carried off by the wind, and set him before the face of the Lord. Enoch fell down and worshipped the Lord, who said to him, quote, "Enoch, be not afraid, rise up and stand before my face forever." End quote. And Michael lifted him up, and at the command of the Lord took his earthly robe from him, and anointed him with the holy oil, and clothed him. And when he gazed upon himself, he looked like one of God's glorious ones, and fear and trembling departed from him. God called then one of his archangels, who was more wise than all the others, and wrote down all the doings of the Lord. And he said to him, quote, bring forth the books from my store place, and give a reed to Enoch, and interpret the books to him, end quote. The angel did as he was commanded, and he instructed Enoch 30 days and 30 nights, and his lips never ceased speaking.
We had 30 again. I talked about that 30 earlier. I can't make it. See what I'm talking about? See, I pay attention to everything. I talked to Prophet. If you're still in here, you remember I showed you last night. I was thinking about praising the Most High. I say, no matter what he blessed me with, no matter how small, no matter how large, I want to always give praises to him. Where I had scratched off that $30 on that ticket. Then this morning I made a video where I had went and swapped that in, and I won another $30. Okay, and I just won $50, $52. But to get back to what I was saying, 30. And he just said it again. Let me back it up just a little bit so y'all can hear it.
And give a reed to Enoch, and interpret the books to him, end quote. The angel did as he was commanded, and he instructed Enoch 30 days and 30 nights. And
yeah, that 30 again. See what I'm talking about? I can't make it up, loves. I pay attention to those synchronicities, the numerology of everything. And I told y'all what that means. I just told y'all last night that no matter what, the universe got you. Didn't I tell you that? That's what that 30 means. No matter what, you being supported by the Most High and by your spirit guides and by the angels. As long as we in our purpose, you're gonna be protected. See what I'm talking about? I cannot make this up, my loves. I can't make it up. 30. No such thing as a coincidence. What are the odds? I had just finished playing the last of the Book of Enoch. Then I played a little bit of the Book of Jubilees. Then I happened to stroll and roll across this, about the ascension of Enoch. So I said, let me go on and play that. It ain't about 20 minutes. So see how I'm divinely guided? All things work together for the good of those who love the Lord.
His lips never ceased speaking. While Enoch was writing down all the things about heaven and earth, angels and men, and all that is suitable to be instructed in, he also wrote down all about the souls of men, those of them which are not born, and the places prepared for them forever. He copied all accurately, right, and he wrote 366 books. After he had received all the instructions from the archangel, God revealed unto him great secrets, which even the angels do not know. He told him how, out of the lowest darkness, the visible and the invisible were created, how he formed heaven, light, water, and earth, and also the fall of Satan and the creation and sin of Adam. He narrated to him, and further revealed to him that the duration of the world will be 7,000 years. And the 8th millennium will be a time when there is no computation, no end, neither years, nor months, nor weeks, nor days, nor hours. The Lord finished this revelation to Enoch with the words, quote, and now I give thee Samuel and Raguel, who brought thee to me. Go with them upon the earth, and tell thy sons what things I have said to thee, and what thou hast seen from the lowest heaven up to my throne. Give them the works written out by thee, and they shall read them, and shall distribute the books to their children's children, and from generation to generation, and from nation to nation. And I will give thee my messenger Michael for thy writings, and for the writings of thy fathers, Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, and Jared.
See, all the names he called out. You don't hear none of them names in the Bible. Well, you hear them talk about Enoch and Noah, but all the rest of them, they don't mention them. I wonder why.
Thy father, and I shall not require them till the last age, for I have instructed my two angels, Ariuk and Mariuk, whom I have put upon the earth as their guardians. And I have ordered them in time to guard them, that the account of what I shall do in thy family may not be lost in the deluge.
You know, that's right, prophet. Even in the Bible, it said that they lived hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. You know what I'm talking about? Man showing their own life by not waking up and realizing who they are. They still sleep.
To come. For on account of the wickedness and iniquity of men, I will bring a deluge upon the earth, and I will destroy all. But I will leave a righteous man of thy race with all his house, who shall act according to my will. From their seed will be raised up a numerous generation, and on the extinction of that family I will show them the books of thy writings and of thy father, and the guardians of them on earth will show them to the men who are true and please me. And they shall tell to another generation, and they, having read them, shall be glorified at last more than before. End quote. Enoch was then sent to earth to remain there for 30 days to instruct his sons.
They got that 30 again.
But before he left heaven, God sent an angel to him whose appearance was like snow, and his hands were like ice. Enoch looked at him, and his face was chilled, that men might be able to endure the sight of him. The angels who took him to heaven put him upon his bed in the place where his son Methuselah was expecting him by day and by night. Enoch assembled his sons and all his household, and instructed them faithfully about all things he had seen, heard, and written down. And he gave his books to his sons to keep them and read them, admonishing them not to conceal the books, but tell them to all desiring to know.
All right, my loves. We're going to call it a day. I don't know. I might come back on a little later on, and we'll get back into it some more with the natal chart and the houses and everything. I really do need to give me some rest, though. I need to lay down for a minute or two. Because I've just been going. I don't see how Loves would do it, but Loves would be a boy. Loves would be doing them 12, 13, 14, 15 hour, 24 hour long live streams. That boy must be don't never go to bed. But anyway, my loves, this has been your girl, Empress Queen. I hope you all enjoyed this. Hope y'all got some understanding out of it. I hope it enlightened you. And as always, go within so you never go without.